So the question always arises in practical spiritual life, how do we maintain a discipline of regularity? That is a steady practice. Practice is one thing, but steady practice, that's what we should all do if we want to uh, make any kind of progress. And I use the word cautiously because it's not like progress towards something, although we can visualize it like that. We can think of our end goal as a kind of top of a mountain kind of thing, and we're climbing the mountain. But actually, when we struggle for a number of years, we realize that what our goal is already with us. And so, Swami Vivekananda is oft quoted, each soul is potentially divine. The goal, see, he mentions goal. The goal is to manifest that divinity. Now, why should that be our goal? Because if I know why it is, we may consider how important and significant it is, and that would be a motivating factor. Nature has an inbuilt motivating factor, it's called pain. And pain, when it becomes impossible and bearable, pushes us into a corner. And when we arrive at this corner, we want to get out of the pain and we look for some other solution. We might look for a higher authority or higher ideal. We might look for a God that can rescue us, save us. The Bhagavad Gita tells us there are several kinds of devotees. And somebody who is in the midst of suffering will turn to God. Please get me out of this. Please rescue me. Another kind of devotee will say, I want a little bit of extra knowledge. I want to know more. And another kind of devotee may say, let me sustain what I have, and so on. But the best of all devotees will just do it for its own sake. Knowing that there's a completeness within us already, we don't have to go anywhere. Initially we may say, oh, I need to go to India or somewhere, or Rome, or on a pilgrimage somewhere, because I need to find God. Well, God's not missing. You won't find him in the lost property office. He's there sitting with you. In fact, more than that, our highest conclusion is it's your own divine nature. And that actually is described as bliss. The Taittiriya Upanishad gives us a gradation of bliss. Supposing you're a young person with all the prospects, good looking, healthy, strong, and all the qualities we would expect of an ideal, youthful human being, that represents one unit of bliss, and then it goes on. Supposing you're Gandharva, then that's more of a unit of bliss. That's much more. But the person who knows the purport of the Vedas, who knows their own nature, who knows the source of their own being, their bliss exceeds all the blisses you can ever mention. You can go on and emphasize the importance of bliss. Why should we emphasize the importance? And bliss is a very extraordinary word. Most people are just content with happiness. But happiness comes and goes. If we were all happy, we wouldn't want it because we already have it. You don't want what you already have. And happiness is a conditional thing. In other words, it's just a holding place. It's just a temporary position. I'm happy conditionally. Why? I'm happy when I don't have digestive problems. I'm happy when I don't have skin problems. I'm happy when I don't have to go and have an operation. I'm happy when I'm healthy, I'm happy. But, how long will health last? When we all have these physical problems, Sri Ramakrishna, 19th century mystic, says it's the rent we pay for the body. We have to understand it's something like a car. We have to maintain the car. It's no good saying I have a car and I'll keep it in the garage. That'll keep it safe. Then it won't deteriorate. It'll still deteriorate. Rust will set in. We have to use it, but we have to maintain it properly. If you identify with the body, then you have missed the whole idea. And our problem really, all our unhappiness and difficulty comes from a sense of duality. I'm here, my body is somewhere else, and yet I am identifying it as something with parts. So that is called roughly egoism. And so what do the scriptures tell us? It tells us you can think in a different way. It gives a suggestion. And it tells us why we should be engaged in spiritual practice. What is the significance and importance of it? As you know, when I give meditation workshops, one of the most common difficulties in people who are avoiding meditation in a regular, steady way is, if they're honest, lack of enthusiasm in a sense. I'm not in the mood. Well, why aren't you in the mood? If you really now start analyzing it more, you say, because actually other things in the way and it's not a priority. Then what's the priority? Roughly speaking, the external world is a property. What the eyes are engaged in, what the skin is engaged in, the sense of smell and so on, all the five senses. The world that is engaged in, that is much more significant and much more important. I mean, I understand why that is. There's no blame attached to this. It's because if you get up in the morning, whatever time it is, you have to go to work, let's say 9 o'clock or something, and then you come home, let's say 5 o'clock in the evening, something like that. Well, statistically, the vast proportion of your day is dealing with all the things in the external world in the form of people you encounter or places or work-related issues and so on. All of that gets crowded in. It's no wonder people come home and say, I need a break. So what do? I'll divert my attention to a simulation of the external world called movies or something. And now I nicely relax. Well, you see, meditation is a kind of relaxation like that, but not putting you into the trap of the external world or a duplication of the external world. So supposing you say, well, I can see easily the face of God if I look out the window and see roses in a garden. That's good. But you're still dealing with the external world, and the external world is just a simulation, as it were, a representation of the beauty which is within. So the flowers are beautiful. Why do we find beauty? Why do we have a sense of aesthetics in the first place? Sense of beauty, because that is our pristine nature. When we find it, we find the beauty of all beauties. But we don't think of it like that. Now, the beauty about human nature is we have the capacity to voluntarily close the eyes in a sitting position and immediately bring up a picture, an internal picture of a flower, an internal picture of all the things that we have admired, and create the corresponding feeling of aesthetics. Sense of beauty comes up, and along with the beauty comes an internal lift, an internal joy, and if we intensify it, it's a rapture. When you see God everywhere, then internally what happens? A kind of rapture takes place. Now, supposing we have a choice. You can engage in this internal feeling of a rapture, or you can engage in a world that creates pain and anxiety and difficulties. Fear. There's a Upanishad, the Taittiriya Upanishad, says in a couple of places, says, when you access this bliss, this your internal nature of your divine self, all your fear goes away. And much of our problem is problem of we are fearful. Why should it go away? Because there is all the divisions have gone. And in its place is the nature of the divine, which we are explicitly told is bliss. We can catch it here and there, and we can catch echoes of it when we look at a beautiful scenery, when we look at a rose flower or something. I always remember going to a group of young students, when I say young, I mean 5-6-year-olds. And they said, Swami, would you please, can you guide them in meditation? And many people who were with me were a little skeptical. How can a 6-year-old meditate? Now it happened to be a celebration to do with what is called Murugan, that is, an aspect of the divine, indicating kinetic energy, activity, divine activity, beauty and conquest, strength, and all these divine qualities that we require in a form, in an anthropomorphic form. And in front of them was this decorated form with beautiful lamps, beautiful steps, lots of flowers, fruits presented, all the various items of traditional worship. To see it, of course, uplifts the spirit also. And of course, the beauty of having some kind of symbol in front of you, a picture or a statue, and the decoration that goes with it, and all of the items that give us clues about how to contemplate something. Not just a figure there. What's the person holding? What's the form holding? What's the face like? How does it look? How do the eyes look? See, all of these things are worthy of exploring, but if we want some visual aspect of it, we have to keep the eyes open and understand it's not just a picture. We're going to add something to it. It is infused with the divine. So knowing this, I asked these small children, so with eyes open, please look at what you have in front of you. I left them to do that. I gave them some clues. Look at the face. How does the face look? Is the face looking at you with sweet love? See the decorations there. See how beautiful the scene is. All of you got it? See the peacock feathers are there and so on. See the vehicle, the vahana, and so all these items. Drink it in, absorb it. So I left them to do that for a few moments. Then I said, close your eyes. Now, when you close the physical eyes, the internal eyes are still open. Now reproduce this in your mind's eye. Imagine it. Now put that image, after some time you have it in glorious technicolor, put it into the internal heart. Imagine there's a space in the heart, put it there. Anyway, they were there meditating for a full 10 minutes and all calm, no fidgeting, nothing. They were all absorbed. And they opened their eyes, and I think the parents, and certainly the person who was accompanying me, were astonished. 6-year-olds being able to meditate like this, how so? So whatever we see with the external eyes, whatever we hear with the external ears, whatever we feel on the skin in terms of pressures, whatever we smell, all the senses can be engaged when all of those senses are closed off and they come alive internally. So meditation is simply reproducing that with the idea I'm going to make an internal connection, going internally to more and more subtle areas. Now, supposing it is difficult to sit for a prolonged period of time for health reasons. Well, that's okay. You sit as long as you possibly can. But it's not the quantity of time, it's the quality. What is the quality of it? There are many people who say, oh, yes, I do my religious worship. Well, what do you do? Well, I repeat the divine names, 1,000 times and so on and so forth, all good. I light a lamp, I have a sip of water, I do this, I do that, all ritualistic. Okay, but then you see it becomes so routine, and that's the difficulty. The ritualism of it and the meaning behind it, they are disassociated. It just becomes the external ritualism of it. When the mind is occupied, okay, what next, and I am busy and I have to go to work. So we have to make sure that we have dedicated time, the same dedicated time every single day. That's the only chance we have of developing a habit. That's how we eat, isn't it? Well, at a certain time of day, digestive juice gets released in the stomach, saliva starts being released in the mouth, and that means that the mind has prepared the digestive system for its food. And we don't have to know, oh, when is food, when we start feeling hungry. That's the time. It's the same time every day. That is why in spiritual life, dedicated spiritual life such as monastic life, there is a routine. You get up a certain time. You sit at a certain time. You continue like that. We're going on a retreat, as you know, in Glendalough shortly, and we give you a flavor for that kind of routine. Because it is only through this regularity. In other words, we are learning a lesson from electricity. What is electricity? It's pushing electrons in one direction. If they're all dispersed in all kinds of directions, we don't get the electrical power that we require. When all the electrons are pushed in one direction, we call this an electrical current. We have to set up the same current in ourselves. And that is only done by a regular, smooth kind of direction. That's the idea. So some traps in meditation. Expectation is a trap. Don't expect anything from it. Simply sit there in the company of God, if you're a devotee, or simply an awareness. You start off with an awareness. Where are we sitting? How are we sitting? Even if you're sitting with some physical pain, you'll be aware of the pain. And when you increase your awareness of the pain, you find some remarkable thing happening. That becomes a point of concentration, and the pain suddenly no longer becomes painful, even though it's still an experience. So anything that we produce as some kind of obstacle can easily be transformed into a directional object of meditation that leads us internally to more and more subtle areas. That's the meaning of it. And why should we do it at all? Because we have an overall purpose. Everybody wants to be free. And the slavery that we happen to have, please don't be content with it. You're going to have to upset your contentment and say, well, as long as everything is fine, as long as I have a house and I have a garden, I have this, I have that, and I have children and grandchildren, whatever it is, I have a car, and so on and so forth. Well, you can't invest in that. That's not a good investment. A car is just something that you can use, but it is a depreciating asset. It's not an increasing investment. Nobody purchases a car for an investment, unless it's a vintage car or something, collector's item. So this body is a depreciating asset, and we only have it for a limited shelf life. It's interesting and important to understand, well, what is the shelf life I have? What is the shelf life of this body? First step, please don't register this as your body. Now, if we're talking of the Taittiriya Upanishad is beautiful. Taittiriya, it's from the teacher is Taittiriya and the disciples that's why it's called Taittiriya Upanishad. It belongs to a certain section of the Yajurveda. Actually, it belongs to the Shukla Yajurveda, because the Krishna Yajurveda is distinguished because it's not in any particular order. The white one, Shukla, is much more ordered. And there you'll find this Taittiriya Upanishad. Firstly, it's interesting to know, it gives many, many important instructions. It gives instructions that are valuable even today for all of us and for children, from children upwards. So we have Matma Diro Bhava, make your mother a goddess, a god for you. The same thing for the father, same thing for your teacher, same thing for a guest. Make all of these a deity for you. Then imagine if you're treating all of that in that same way, you've surpassed the Mosaic commandment, which is honor your father and your mother. No, more than that. What about your guest? What about your teacher? All of that. So many instructions are like that, and the first part of the Taittiriya Upanishad will be directed to departing students. In their education, they will have understood this wonderful principle of dharma, derived from this root, dra, which means to bind things, hold things together, tie things together. This cloth is tied together. If it wasn't, then I'd have to give it away or create a dusters from it. But it's knitted together, and therefore there's a harmony, you can say, in this shirt. I can use it. And so this word dharma is applied in many, many different contexts. But essentially it acts as a platform so that students going beyond their student life, their education, will now carry some fundamental ethical and moral teachings and practices. Because during their training, they would have had to, which is called brahmacharya, which actually means self-control. As a student, self-control is necessary. Nowadays you won't find it because the educational system says, oh, after all of that formal primary, secondary education, you all go off to university and drink. That seems to be common practice. They have the freedom to misbehave. Many universities have that kind of understanding. A student is there to enjoy life as well as study. Enjoy the freedom you have. Well, the ancient days said, oh, good citizenship, the development of that is much more important. Because if you now slide in your moral and ethical discipline, then actually, no matter how much you study and pass your exams and so on and so forth, that aberration will continue, and that creates difficulties and pain for yourself and antisocial behavior and so on. Of course, it's also just a phase, no doubt, but the foundation has to be there. It's called dharma. And in the four aims of life, after dharma comes artha. That means in the householder life, you go and dedicate all your energy to wealth creation, but that becomes immoral if you don't have the basis of dharma. So dharma is the building block. And then you have wealth creation. That means for the good of yourself and society and others. What is the point of wealth creation if the whole society doesn't benefit? That's why, business encouraging business growth and all of those kinds of things is benefiting the whole of society, is wealth for the whole of the society. You happen to be part of it. Because there is this dharma, I have a duty towards society. I play a role in it. The whole of the Bhagavad Gita is directed essentially at Arjuna doing his duty, and therefore for all of us doing our duty. But based on, it's called dharma. Do your dharma. Not only that, but within it is swadharma, your individual role in life, your individual way of harmonizing. So this harmony has to be there. Nature is dedicated to it. It's only humans, stupidly, who go and upset this harmony. And then, of course, the next thing is to fulfill all legitimate desires thereafter. But fundamentally, the desire for your freedom is cultivated until this final pursuit is there, namely this final stage of sannyas, which means that you intensely say, okay, now I'm serious about it. Now, all these aims of life is fine, but building up to one thing. And what is that? We want to be free. Enslavement is not a good idea. The whole of the old Jewish foundation and celebration of the Exodus. Now, we don't know if it's a historical thing, probably not, but there's an allegory there. We are caught in slavery, we want our freedom, we resort to the divine to get it, to rescue us and take us, your children, out of this slavery condition, into the land of milk and honey. What is that? Into the land of bliss. Is there anybody who doesn't want to be beyond happiness, complete bliss? And bliss means no fear. So that's the idea. So the same Taittiriya Upanishad, having given good instructions to students, then has a curious way of putting things. We want to find out what is the source of everything, without which life becomes meaningful. And if we don't keep that at the forefront of our mind, then we won't have any motivation for self-discipline. And if we view self-discipline as a kind of struggle, unpleasant task, see, unfortunately, the word is interpreted as a kind of negative thing, unpleasant thing. But all it means is we have to establish regularity. And we have to revalue things. We have to switch our traditional point of view, orthodox point of view, and see things in some way differently. So what is this body? We can start off with that. What is the body? And even before that, we can also understand what is the source of what we see as evolutional change. Up front it's saying there's something called Brahman. There is something which is there, which is the source. And of course, in Vedanta, all the Upanishads are telling us this internal self, ultimately, that is Brahman. We'll find it everywhere, but there's no place nor time for it, but it is the source. We have an urge to find the source. What is the source of what? The source of happiness, the source of fulfillment, the source of our life. We want to do that. So somebody once said, if you want to find the source, okay, it's in the cupboard. We call it ketchup. No, not that kind of source. The source of the Nile in Africa, many people want to spend many difficult periods of time historically in finding out what is the source of a river. Once you find the source of something, you found everything else. If you find the source of this existence, then you find everything. You have completeness. There's absolute fulfillment in the whole thing. That's what we want, but we have to keep reminding ourselves it's worthwhile. It's worth it. Initially, it feels like an effort. Why does it feel like an effort? Because we're getting out of our rut. We say, well, we can delay it, you see. A young person can say, yes, I'll start attending to these matters. Once I've enjoyed my youth and all the rest of it, in old age, just before death, I can start. No, too late. You start when you're young, because you have to develop a systematic rhythm, which we call a habit. Build it up systematically. So we have to overcome all these obstacles, which we can categorize essentially as laziness or lack of enthusiasm, etc. But it boils down to we don't really see what is the real benefit and purpose of what we're doing. Why is it the most important thing that we have to do? More important than anything else. Because if you don't attend to the fundamentals, if you build a building and you don't attend to the quality of the foundations, don't expect the fifth floor to stand. The whole thing will crack and crumble. So we have to have the basics right. These basics we call Dharma. So it's the source of evolution. That is the Taittiriya Upanishad. People are asking, so what is the source of everything? Science is asking this question. They're looking for the most fundamental generalized thing, which is also the subtlest thing, but generalized because it's pervading everywhere. So for example, you may say, well, matter is everything. There's one position from the materialists, but then that's not true. Modern science will tell us, no, energy is actually everything, but even that energy has a source. Now what do we say? This energy is divine energy. This matter is divine substance. Present it in this way. Crystallize it, if you will, as this world. And our world is centralized around a body. So the Taittiriya Upanishad understands this, and it tells us, well, if you know this Brahman, this source, if you can attain that, as it were, discover it, as it were, if you know it as the real, if you know it as hidden because it's obscured by all these other distractive things, in the depth of the heart, even as it pervades everywhere, he enjoys all blessings and realizes all desires, being one with Brahman. Now, supposing you say, well, my distraction is I want this, I want that. All right. You see, supposing you say, I want a piece of land. So what I'll do is I'll apply to the municipal authority somewhere there. And they say, no, you can't do it. It's not suitable for your purpose. Supposing you say, well, let me go to a higher authority. So supposing you go to the highest possible authority, it'll override the junior official. Yes, we'll give you a land, it's for a good purpose. You want to build an ashram on it, that's fine. It'll benefit society. It'll help uplift humanity. It'll stop violence. It'll create a sense of equality everywhere. And it'll make people useful in society. Okay, let's give you some land for free. In Zimbabwe, Swami Nishasananda, he did some pioneering work in Mauritius. And they didn't have any land or anything like that. But on his arrival, he was introduced to the governor of Mauritius. And he was quite a clever artist. So he looked around and he said, I see nobody painted your portrait. If I paint your portrait and you like it, will you give me some land? Yes, okay. Carefully he painted the governor's portrait, and it was so beautiful. He got a tea estate and a sugar estate. That's the foundation of the center there in Mauritius. So when we go to the highest authority, we get the land, we get what we want. People are investing in desires, thinking my activity will create a desire, my desire will be fulfilled by my own activity. But if you're going to the source, all desires automatically get fulfilled. Imagine. Effortlessly, automatically. So, all desires will be fulfilled. And from that Brahman, that self, what happens? Well, there's a kind of evolution. First of all, space is produced. What we can call akasha, unfortunately, or fortunately, loosely translated as space. But from space comes, according to this evolutionary cosmology, from the space it contains matter within it. That is what we mean by akasha. Because akasha means the thing through which we hear. So in other words, the first kind of sets of subtle vibrations. And we know that the easiest way to pick up vibrations is through the ears. So the corresponding ears are made. And then from akasha, we say from space or air, so that we can feel corresponding to the skin. And from there, fire or form or color, that means we can pick it up with the eyes. And then we have water, and we cannot live without water. You can't move without water. We were discussing the other day, somebody says, oh, AI, you see, robots and so on and so forth, will they ever replace humans? You cannot simulate a human unless you make it from water, not silicon, because water makes things flexible and gives you this compensatory methodology in every single cell that has a plan B, a plan C to repair everything. And so we come to the element of earth. All these elements are there, known by these ancient rishis from long back, and correspond to potential energy, kinetic energy, radiation, electricity, magnetism. They left out one thing, nuclear forces, a recent discovery, which probably boils down to electromagnetism anyway. And so, where do we get? Physically, from earth comes herbs and vegetation, and from that comes food. All creatures rely on food. Now you ask then, what is the human body? What's it made from? It's made from food. It's made from material. And when you see where does the material come from, well, a whole sequence of events are necessary. You require the earth, you require soil, you require nutrients in it, you require rainfall, you require water, And where's the water coming from? It's coming from a certain radiation. In fact, the whole of everything is coming from the sun. And where is that coming from? It's coming from a certain potential energy which is there. It's coming from a vast area. And where's that coming from? It's coming from subtle vibrations in space. And where's that coming from? It's coming from a cosmic mind, a cosmic intellect. And where's that coming from? That's coming from Brahman, the source. Everything can be traced back to the source. Suppose when we contemplate a flower, it's not just a flower. Even standing, yes, you can see here's a flower, but don't accept it at face value, because when you start looking at it properly, what will happen is you'll come back to the source. Meditation is a question of taking familiar objects and making an image of them internally with a sense of adventure, canalizing a current of thought, saying, come on, oh, thought arriving here at this station, I pour you this way, I pour you that way, until you come to, I feel I'm now home, that is it, pure being, whose nature is bliss. Don't you want bliss? So we have to change our mind probably about how we approach such a thing as meditation if we have a difficulty with it, and to understand the value of getting into the systematic routine of it, which then becomes automatic. And we often use the example of driving. See, when you drive the car now, then continuously, and you practice and you allocate some time, schedule time for that practice, then ultimately you drive the thing almost without thinking. It becomes automatic. Supposing you drive your car every day from your place of work to your home, but then you change home, you take another house, and absent-mindedly you drive the car to your old home. I no longer live here. This is how powerful habit is. So we want to develop useful habits, harmonizing habits. Spiritual life is developing systematic harmonizing habits that have the effect of revealing. Now, this Taittiriya Upanishad doesn't stop there. It doesn't say, okay, this is made from food. It goes on and says, actually occupying that with the same form of that is pure energy. Well, energy, is it only personal energy, only allocated to you and the next person? No, it is universally found everywhere. It is much more subtle. When that prana stops, breath stops. When breath stops, the medical people says, death certificate. So food is there, and the interesting thing about food is the food gets converted into energy through an internal process, metabolic process. But in order to do that, you require energy. What is this energy and what is this food? This food is divine. It is the divine appearing like this, an arrangement in order to get things going. And then what is this energy? A divine arrangement, because there's only one energy. It is divine energy. As somebody who knows these things, whatever we meditate on comes to us. So by understanding the value of food as a fundamental in its coarse form, not even understanding how we got there, is never without food. Somebody who understands the principle of energy is never without energy. So it goes on. And it doesn't stop there. If you go behind there, more pervasive, more subtle, more close to reality is what we call Manomaya Kosha, that is mind. And mind is something that we can observe, and it is there in everything. It creates an element of intelligence, self-awareness, and so on. Behind that is another thing, Jnanamaya Kosha, that means intellect, vast, of the same form, behind and pervading and incorporating all the others. And behind that, bliss. How do we experience that bliss? Dreamless sleep. There we have it. That is close, but not yet. And whose bliss is it? It is the reflected bliss. It is the bliss of the divine. And he who knows that always becomes blissful. And then what is there? The source. The source from which everything comes, by which things are sustained, and that by which things are end. Things come from it. Things are going toward it. And the only thing that exists is this. Now, if you don't understand that immediately, the Upanishads suggest a progressive route, and that's a kind of meditation itself. In fact, the meditation we did previously was exactly that, going from this gross thing called food or matter, energy, these are the two fundamentals in the physical sense, behind that mind, behind that intellect, containing ego, and behind that bliss. And what stands there, that is the sum totality, and that is the supreme. It is your own divine nature. And when you get that, all fear goes. All fear goes. All difficulties go. So this is the Taittiriya Upanishad. This is the subject of this talk originally was, you see, peeling away these layers. When we understand that we are not just a single entity, that there are layers, just as a person studying physiology or anatomy or something realizes, well, there's something more than the dermatology layer. Behind that, in fact, even the dermatology has layers within layers, and every organism has an external skin layer. In other words, an absorption layer that brings things in, including food, that converts it, and an emission is taking place called a reaction. You can see it. We breathe in and we breathe out. We breathe in air that contains oxygen, oxygenating the body through a mechanism, and making a nice exchange with carbon dioxide and taking it off, making a nice arrangement whereby we give that to useful plants, and in return they give us oxygen. What a beautiful divine arrangement. We should surely have a feeling of thankfulness and wonder at such a wonderful divine arrangement. So the Taittiriya Upanishad gives us an opportunity for meditation. It says, come on, go from the outside to the inside, because even the physical body will have inside it a number of other things. It'll have bones and muscles and so on. You go in a wonderful internal organism, a collection of organisms designed more efficiently than a factory. And it doesn't matter, even if I'm careless in eating, the Lord of the universe is there behind it all. We're assured as Vaishvana digestive fire. It's all right, I'll sort it out, my child. You go to sleep. You go into your state of imagination, make some adventures, and then go into this state of bliss, blissful peace. And then while you're doing that, I'll stay awake and organize all the other things, refresh your cells, and relax all your concerns and so on. Maybe give you some useful dreams that solve problems or whatever it is. And wake you up in the morning. Come on, my child. It is time for meditation. Yes. So we regularly do things to take care of our physicality. We regularly eat. We regularly bathe. We regularly brush the teeth, etc., etc. It's not a struggle for us. So that kind of regularity we have to set up to the extent that I cannot do without this personal encounter called meditation, a joyful thing, a pleasant thing, which gives me the awareness and the overwhelming, saturating feeling of internal bliss. Not just joy, bliss is a level higher than any joy. And the Taittiriya Upanishad gives us this gradation of bliss. So we're saying Brahman is the cause and also the evolving thing that comes out as life. It's all that one thing. Don't think there's any separation about it. And then we have to have a look at matter and life and register them As food, we can put it in that way, and as prana, as energy. And then we can look at life, and we can look at the mind, and then we're going to look at mind, and then understanding, which is the intellect. And whatever we are experiencing here is global, is cosmic. There is a cosmic mind called Mahat. That's only the great entity which is there. So the Taittiriya Upanishad brings us in progressively, internally, more and more and more and more, to more subtle areas, more expansive areas, more pervasive areas, until we get increasing levels of satisfaction and joy. And when we know that that is the key, then that meditation is this highly pleasant practice. We have to be careful not to do it for the sake of pleasure, but for the sake of the inherent and automatic bliss that comes with self-discovery. And so understanding and bliss is the next layer. And then beyond bliss is Brahman, which is the one being, is repeated in the Taittiriya Upanishad, is the source of everything. Once we understand the principle of it, the urge to discover it is surely going to combat any reluctance or difficulty or I'm not in the mood kind of approach to this subject of meditation, unless we think it's a struggle or unless we try to meditate. So meditation has nothing to do with trying. It's nothing to do with struggle or effort. On the contrary, it's to do with letting go and taking the mind on an adventure, attention on an adventure. Is what I call a planned dream. A dream is a haphazard thing. We have no control over it. But we have control over our meditation practice, constructing a beautiful scene, a glorious technicolor. People try to do it externally. I once saw some picture or information about Japanese people sitting in front of a screen meditating. What was the screen? It was taking them through a visual scene, something like a valley or something, some kind of journey. Well, in principle, they had the right idea, but you don't require the eyes to do it. They're simply closing the eyes and reproducing it. And why should we do that? Because anything external won't take us there. But when we meditate, as it were, with eyes open, then any subject will be there. Just as you say, we can look at a rose flower and we can have a penetrating vision about that and say, oh Lord, you're there. It's just the face is there, appearing as a rose flower. But we can't say that that beauty is exclusively belonging to a rose flower, because at some point or other, all the petals will go and the flower disintegrates and goes into dormancy and so on. But we can still see the beauty of it. A penetrating vision that goes beyond the externals and goes to the internals can only happen when we shut off all the external disturbances and close the eyes. Not only the eyes, but close off all the sense organs and say, okay, oh attention. The Taittiriya Upanishad says, see, that's our difficulty. We're always orientated toward the outside. But one astute person says, oh, wait, let me reverse it and look inside. It's like I'm looking through the windows all the time, not understanding the comfort of the internal arrangement. Internal furnishings are there, did you notice it? And so going inward, that's it. Taking that journey with an adventurous and pleasant attitude of self-discovery, knowing that this contact with the source of everything will give us everything we want. So it's a good investment of energy. And so the Taittiriya Upanishad labors the point, tells us about the importance of food. It tells us about food and light and water. It tells about food and earth and the akasha, the ether. It tells us about the meditation in different forms. It gives us the opportunity for mystical chants. And so there's a system within meditation. We recently did a course in the UK is called refining meditation. And so refining meditation is for people who know the principles of meditation. One person said, well, I've come because a friend says I'm coming, but I'm just here to listen because I know meditation. And then as they left, they said, I know nothing about meditation, thank you. Now I know much more. So we have to make sure our meditation is refined more and more. In other words, the tuning is more and more. It means the access is more and more. And a daily growth is more and more. A daily revelation becomes more and more. So that becomes extremely important, to set up a regularity of practice to do this. It doesn't start there. It has to start with eyes open in our, as I call it, our working waking life. That's the cuckoo clock. It is designed to tell me I have to finish now. So the whole idea of a progressive journey starts with the outside. We don't shut the outside off immediately. We use it and we internalize it. And even with the eyes open, engaged in the world around us, we still maintain this penetrating vision that says, I'm looking at the very source, even though it expresses itself as food, matter, that is, energy, divine energy, that mobilizes everything, as mind, as intellect or understanding, as bliss, and ultimately, there you are, the source of all beings. We practice that all the time, and that's meditation with the eyes open, necessary prerequisite for meditation with eyes closed. Well, we'll leave it there. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Good.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Om